Hey everyone, good evening. Donna Nelson here. Welcome to episode 46 of Rooted in Wisdom, a daily dose of Donna. Tonight we're talking about belonging, and I love having the timeliness of conversations that I can bring to these live sessions and hopefully shed some light and some insights and resolution to things that I know are challenges and that others are experiencing at the same time. So, the reason that we're talking about belonging today and my tagline of "Where's my people?" Is because that's what belonging is all about, right? Like, where are our people? Belonging is about connection. And when we humans don't have meaningful connection, having our place of belonging, then we feel this sense of isolation and questioning our own worthiness. And it's like what comes first, right? The worthiness, the chicken or the egg. Um, and this emptiness. And so not having a place where we belong. And, it's interesting as I think about the conversations I've had with people so often around this mm, feeling of loneliness or not having a sense of belonging or not feeling worthy or a sense of connection. And it's all in the same mixing bowl because they're all connected in some way on some level, depending on which one has the highest value or the highest need at the time. And so talking about um, feeling lonely, and I lost my train of thought, where I was going with that, but um, feeling lonely and isolated are usually the things that are coming up. And we're hearing this, a lot, of course, because of the pandemic, right? People have been on lockdown and not out and socializing, not in the groups, in the clubs, and those social networks where we might have been, a year and a half ago. And so I feel like it's starting to really, really catch up with people now. And part of that is expectation. Many of us have anticipated and expected that by now this shit would be over and we would be back to normal or our old ways of life or being able to move on and do some of those old things and new things, right? But besides all of that, belonging and where are my people? So the last 2 days, I've had three conversations that the word belonging only came up once. But in the conversation, it helped me realize how important this sense of belonging is, and I needed to speak to it. So, so in the one conversation, and here's what I want to say about this too, is that it's so easy for us sometimes to look at people on the outside and think that they have their act so together. And that's most of the people that I work with, right? On the outside, most of the world looks at them and says, wow, they're so together, right? Their life is so ideal, right? They've got all these credentials, or they have this financial success, or they live in the neighborhood, or they have what looks like this, fantastic family or family support system, or they're so well respected in the community. Whatever those things are that we kind of externally look at people, and they're nice, right? They're probably the really nice people, right? They're so giving and they're generous and they appear to be, so kind and open and all of that. Yeah, well, let me just tell you, they're a hot mess because I talk to those people all the time. But one of the conversations that I was having was with one of my colleagues who is very successful, and anybody would look at them and just know that they've got it together, even with the things in their professional space, right? How they serve and help. Yet in our conversation, it was about this. lack of belonging in like, where's my people? And I have definitely felt that way many times. As a coach, especially a coach that works online, I'm not like showing up to the office every day, seeing people and having this direct impact and engagement. And while I've been doing this for a long time, it's not like you get used to that disconnect of people, right? So we all have to have this place of, where's my people? Where do I fit in? Where am I accepted? Where am I validated? Where am I making a contribution? Where am I understood? And most of us have a short list, right? Like, I mean, like even our families, whether they live with you or they don't, most of the people that I talk to, they have a family. They are immersed in a family. They have people around them. But to really say that they have this sense of deep connection and belonging, no. So I want to help with that. And part of the reason I'm saying that is because I know it's most of you, and I want you to know it's not just you, that it is most of our world right now. It's most of our country. It's most of our communities. And it's a problem. And it's a problem because when we have this lack of connection and having a place where we know we belong, right? Like, well, if you're as old as me, you probably remember Cheers, right? Like, you go to the bar and everybody knows your name and you can hang out. And while those may be in some ways a little superficial, although there were some great deep friendships at that bar. Um, but in any case, we don't have a place like that where we can go and people are like, I know where you work, I know your wife, and I know your troubles, and I know your deepest dreams and the things that you aspire for and your pain and all of that. Like, that's how we have connection, right? And most of us live on the surface, and we don't have people that we trust with those things. Why? Because really, let's be honest, most people really don't give a shit about your problems and your dreams and your struggles, because they've got their own and they're so outside of themselves that they are disconnected from themselves. So how could they possibly care about your shit? Right? Like, how could they possibly care about what's going on with you when they're struggling so deeply themselves? And therein lies the challenge, right? Is that because most people are in that space, and it's like trying to keep their head above water and gasp for air without inhaling more water. That's kind of the analogy to share. So so but when we're feeling like we don't belong, I know for me, it was like this sense of feeling objectified, right? Like either like being an entity, right? Like I'm just a thing and I'm going through these motions, I'm holding up this role, I'm doing these things for these people and I'm getting this, and it's almost like machinery. And that can be um really deafening for our soul, and that will lead to depression, anxiety, suicide. I mean, we see it. I mean, look at some of them. I was just talking with someone a couple of days ago, and I brought up Kate Spade. And if you don't know who she is, she was this amazing woman who had all these designer purses in her name, Kate Spade. And she committed suicide, and people were like, wow, what happened? Like, she looked happy. I just her her dad just talked to her like a couple hours before she took her own life. And it's because we don't belong. We don't have this our inner connection to ourselves. So how could we be connecting with anyone else? And the truth is, the higher someone goes on up the ladder, which is why I love working with people at the tops of organizations, because it is lonely as hell at the top. As a solopreneur, it's lonely. As an executive at the top of a huge company, it is lonely. And if you don't have, not have, I don't want to say if you don't have, not having someone as your confidant, someone as your go-to to bounce things off of, someone to like feel things to when you can't go home to your spouse and do that because there's already a disconnect or they don't get it. It's all over their head, um, or there's already a disconnect, a fractured relationship there. It breeds all of this stuff that I'm talking about here. So 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 not having a place of belonging. So the second one was, so okay, so to go on, anyway, this came up 3 times. They're all related because it's all the same stuff, and here's what it's all the same stuff about. One, we could say it's the pandemic, but this has been a broad issue way before the pandemic. The pandemic has contributed more to it and exaggerated those who are already in this I'm not sure where I belong. So, uh, but so what is the solution to that? Well, one is that it really comes back to ourself. It always comes back to self, right? Whatever the struggles are out there are a reflection of what's going on in here. And so while it may be hard to find places to belong, when we do the work in here, we'll find those places. We'll insert ourselves because we will seek them out and we'll also attract them. And that was part of the conversation I was having with my colleague, is that, she was saying that, there's no one in my community, like where she lives, who does what she does, can relate to the work that she's doing. And that's true for me too, right? I don't have anybody in my community that gets what I do or works in the same way that I do, like serves and coaches and, has the same philosophy and approach that I do, that we can just like hang out and collaborate and, you know, whatever. Like, no, I mean, thank God for my online support systems. So but that's what she and I were talking about, and how, our collaboration, how our likeness, and, being able to be online and find those places where we can belong and connect with other people who get it, right? And so but that comes from knowing yourself, right? That this is the first step to being, successful in life, and that is having an appreciation and understanding of yourself first. Because if you're not clear on your own values, your own identity, um, you know your own self-worth is going to be diminished as a result of that. So what will happen when we don't have this sense of belonging, and it's a primary human need, we'll find a place to belong. It may fracture us, right? We'll sell our soul, like we'll break off parts of ourselves to belong. And that's what ends up happening, right? We end up inserting ourselves in these places that are, I don't know, convenient, available, um, because they're nearby, or because, we got invited, and, it might be a connection through someone else, but it doesn't really align. And so then we insert ourselves into these situations socially, relationally, in other ways, right? Whether it's work or social gatherings, or, intimate relationships, whatever, right? Just so we can have some connection and belong. But it's not ideal, right? It's not really in alignment with our values, with our aspirations, with our true identity. But the more we hang out in those places that aren't in alignment with um, our true identity, the more we get diminished in our worth, and even recognizing who we are authentically. And so then it becomes this kind of purging process. And so, the one thing is, remove yourself from those things that don't serve your highest self. So I don't care if it's family, I don't care if it's your job and you have to leave, and how, if there's, a plan you have to put in place to do that, to move on, so that you can get out of those toxic places that diminish your value. Social networks. I mean, I have a club that, a social club that I'm in, that I'm leaving because there's no connection, there's no belonging. I have my name, I pay my dues, I show up, and that's it. And I mean, there's no reason for me to do that. So it's time to move on, and you have to be able to recognize those. And you do that by doing this whole self inner work first. So working with a coach that has like the work that I do, where it has this whole self approach, looking at your values, exploring your identity, bringing out your purpose, right? Um, and your value. Did I say that? Values and your authentic self. Until you do that, it's hard to even know where you belong to even find those. And then you're going to be, otherwise, you'll be inserting yourself in these surface level situations just to have that belonging need met, but you'll take away from other needs. Um, so I hope that makes sense in that way. So, so belonging is, so here's what I see often is that belonging is viewed as something we find versus something we create. So, what I was just describing is belonging is something we create because it's something that is within us to get clear on what we value and what our true identity is, um, through our identifying our authenticity, right? And that is oftentimes purging and getting to the root of things and healing those things, purging those toxic things. Yet what many attempt to do is have this belonging through something we find, like clubs, um, relationships, status, right? Um, being in the right neighborhood, being at the right gym, being at the right golf club, having the right title. None of that is going to ever get you belonging if those are the only reasons that you're doing it. All they're going to get you is, it might get you a higher salary, it might get you accolades, but which is what on the surface belonging feels like, right? Because it's validation, it's giving me that sense of importance or whatever. So the more titles that I can have, the more letters behind my name, then that will satisfy those primary survival needs that all humans have. But it's short lived because then what? So, okay, I accomplished that. And now I feel empty again. Now I look around and I don't have anyone in my life that has any deep meaning. And so that's why we need to do the inner work so that we can, know that no matter what, we can always come back to self. But you can't be by yourself, right? We're humans. We are humans that require connection and we require belonging. And so, yes, identifying those things that we value in our life and that we can belong. And, one of the things that it really brought tears to my eyes tonight as this word belonging came up, and literally an hour ago, I had no idea what I was going to talk about tonight. And but we opened up the membership for my passion project, my nonprofit, Adopt a Single Mom, and we have a membership. So single moms join and fill in an application, and we get lots of great insights from that application process. And one of the things that I realized tonight with some of the applications that were already submitted today is this sense of belonging. And it literally hit my heart in such a way that I was like, wow. And it hit my heart in a way that it was a good way and a bad way. In a good way, it was like, wow, this is great. This is important. And I'm glad that we have this and we do this. But then the other part of it was like the flip side, because for me, I'm always like, oh, that's good. Oh, but what should we do better? Or what's bad about that? And, the other emotions that immediately came up about that for me was around, oh my God, we need to do so much more. Like, really, like, this is like really important. Like, this can really make a difference in a woman's life who is out there as a single mom, working, struggling on her own. And the struggles are so many, like the daily challenges. I'll say it that way. The daily challenges are many, and most of these women aren't talking about them. In fact, so to finish my thought on that, is that um, it made me realize that having a place where we all belong, and we know we belong because we have things in common and people there care about us, and we can have a voice and be heard, and that matters. And yesterday I was in a group chat with a couple of other women, and they were talking about um, I didn't know these women were single moms, because they're I mean, I'll say it this way, like, to me, like, they're major successful women, and they're doing great things, and I know they have kids, but we didn't really talk about that. But in the conversation, it became very candid and open at one point. They were just talking about the struggles over the last year, and one of them being in a newly divorced situation, and all the things, like so many things. And I just don't want to share too much more, because it's a small world. But anyway, it just made me realize from those conversations how important it is for us all to find our place, but to do as much of our own work as we can, so that we find those right places that really nourish us and nurture us, so that we're not ending up in this state of feeling alienated and lonely, even when we're in a crowd of people. So, and I've been there too. So I know what that feels like, to know the difference between, yeah, I'm in a crowd of people and it feels good, and I'm in a crowd of people and yet I'm here alone. So, anyway, so I hope that is helpful. Um, to one soul, and then I'll be happy. And so if I can support you in a way of helping, get to the root of some of those things, and help bring out um, those values and your identity, and help you feel more deeply connected to yourself, so that you can get to that place where you can find your belonging, then PM me. All right. Good night, everyone.